Hey everyone, Dean here at the Secret Underground Lair. I want to show you this children's clothes rack that we have built. Started with a sketch that looked like that and ended up as this is the final product. So I'll show you how that's done in this video. So this Montessori style clothing rack is going to be made up with 3 shelves, including that very top shelf, and a clothing rod across the top. The overall dimensions are going to be about 38 inches tall, and the overall dimensions 44 inches long, 16 inches of which will be the shelf space and 28 inches for the clothing rack portion. Off camera, I selected some wood and glued together the pieces into these panels. So individual pieces all glued together to make up the shelves, all 3 shelves. And we have a large piece that I used for the bottom shelf, but I figured this piece needs a little patch to be put in. There are 2 very large knot holes in this piece that I don't want to have part of the shelf, so I'm going to cut that out and use this little patch inserted into that part that I've cut out. And that'll make one solid shelf, and you won't really be able to tell that it's there once it's all put in place, glued and sanded, and ultimately painted. So continuing on with our toddler wardrobe, we're going to be cutting these little cross pieces here. They're going to be 10 3/8 of an inch, and there's 1 inch on each. The posts themselves are 1 inch wide, so the total width is going to be 12 3/8 of an inch. So I've set up the compound miter saw, put my guide block on here, my stop block. Already set a piece in there, push it up against there, and that'll cut us exactly 10 3/8. There we are. Next we'll do the vertical range. The stop block has been set for 38 inches, so we're going to cut off the 6 vertical rails. Okay, here's our 6 vertical rails, all 38 inches, all of them 38 inches long. Our horizontal rails, 10 3/4. So next step will be giving these all a rough sand first. Back on the toddler wardrobe, we're going to be cutting the pieces that go along here. There are 8, we'll call them the front and back rails for the 4 shelves. So we're going to cut those. They'll be 12 1/2 inches long. So I'm setting up the compound miter saw. I'll put on the guide bar and we'll cut those pieces off. Okay, there's our 8 pieces cut. All right, the shelves and edges and legs have been sanded, given a rough sand. What we're doing now is notching out the shelf sides and front and back, because what we want to have is the shelf kind of encased in a structure like this. Basically, the shelf will sit inside that to provide a flush surface here, but it'll give the appearance of the shelf being 1 inch thick, the same dimensions as the legs. So it'll appear it's all one dimension. Ultimately, this, of course, will be given a slight round over, a 1/4 inch round over, just to make it good for small hands to grasp. So I've set up. I've cut the bottom shelf and cut the bottom pieces. These will go on like so. I'm looking at the bottom of the shelf, of course. I'm going to notch out I'm going to notch out these corners so that the legs will fit in nicely there. Kind of like that. So we'll get on to that part now. All right, the corners are notched. We put the edge pieces on. We'll do a little bit of sanding. And we'll start working on the upper shelves. So we'll get those all done next. So here's the sides, the bottom shelf rather, all done up. You can see how we got a 1-inch piece here to make the sides appear thicker. A notch cut out for the leg. And we're getting ready now to do the shelves. So these are all of the 3 shelves that'll go up the side. We're over here at the table saw with the blanks that are going to go on the edge of each shelf. Here's one that's already been cut, so you can see the profile that we're going. The shelf sits in that ledge. So I'll set the camera up and take you through the cutting of those little edge pieces for the shelves. All right, there's all our pieces. We'll go now attach them to the shelves. So this is roughly how the pieces are going to sit on the shelf itself. But before cutting, or before attaching these to the shelves, I'm going to mark and cut off this little piece here, this little corner of the shelf. So the edges that we've just cut are designed to meet corner to corner, just like that. And the leg will sit right in the middle of that, or sorry, right in that little pocket. So this will be flush with the edge of the leg. This will be butt up tight against the edge, the other edge of the leg. This little corner of the shelf needs to be cut out. So using the edge pieces themselves, I'll line them up like so, mark the shelf, and then just run over to the bandsaw and cut off those corners on each shelf. So we'll do that now. Okay, over to the bandsaw, we'll cut out those little corners. Little trick for cleaning up the glue, just over just sawdust. You've probably seen this technique used before by others, but first time I saw it, I thought, well, that's interesting. And I've just been amazed at how well it works, both in terms of cleaning up the glue and getting sawdust into the cracks a little bit to fill it in, so there's less need for any wood filler when you get to the sanding phase. Okay, there's the shelf, and we'll do the other two, and I'll come back when we're ready for sanding. We've got the edges all glued up. I'm just going to put in a little bit of wood filler on these little nail holes that were set. So we'll just fill up that on all three shelves, all four sides. This particular wood filler, it seems to be a little bit like wet sand when you put it on, but I noticed that when you rub it, give it that kind of circular motion, it becomes a little more paste-like and fills into the holes and the cracks really well. All right, we got the pieces just kind of loosely sitting together for this little toddler wardrobe, Montessori style. So you can see the shelf unit, which will run up the left side. Right side's just going to have a beam going up to it, and across the top here from there to there will be a hanging rod for clothes. So I'm just going to go through the whole thing, make sure we have good fit. For example, spend a little bit of time trying to make that looking good. I'll go through each of these other joins just to make sure that we have a nice, good, clean edge. And then I'm going to have to do a little bit of a round over on the inside corner of each leg. Just because it's going to be very difficult to do that once the unit is assembled. So we'll do that one first. And then we're going to do a round over when the unit is assembled, so I can bring the router right along here and up here, and that will give this, every kind of frame here will have a nice round over on it, and we won't be affecting any of the joinery here. We'll do a round over here as well. Just setting up here on the router table to take off the corner, you can just see that's rounded over just a little wee bit. That's all we want to do. We got small fingers grasping this, and we don't want them to be exposed to these very sharp edges that are left from all of the cutting and sanding. So we'll just round off those edges just a little bit. Got a little round over bit set up in the router, on the router table, with a bearing on the top, so we can just run the pieces up against that. I'm only going to be doing one edge on the four legs. We're going to do the remainder of the round over once the unit has been assembled. So I'll set the camera up so you can watch me doing this. Okay, we're good to go. I've put a little mark on the edge here just so that I know what edge it is that I want to trim. So each of the four pieces that we're doing are already marked and set up, so I can just grab them easily and quickly. Here we go. That's just broken the edge nicely on those pieces, so I'm ready now to do the assembly. Of course, we'll do a bit of a sand on that as well, just to as part of the finishing process. All right, I got you set up here on the corner, bottom left corner leg. For the joinery, what I'm going to be doing is drilling with a Forstner bit, just starting about here and coming in on an angle. So I'm heading down into the diagonal towards the center of the shelf. We'll drill down just a little bit, almost the head of the Forstner bit itself. Then I'll be going back in with a small drill bit. This is a 364 or a 3/64 bit. That'll go down deeper into the wood as a pilot hole for this actually pocket hole screw, sometimes called a particle board screw. I'm using this because it has a nice flat shoulder that'll land firmly on the shoulder left by the Forstner bit. And then that will pull the shelf into the leg or the leg into the shelf and keep a nice tight joint. Ultimately, that hole is going to be filled with a plug and then sanded off. So you'll never know that there's a screw in there, but that's the intent. So I'll drill the first hole, get this joint all set up, show you how I'm doing it, and then I'll go ahead and do the rest. I'm going to go just a little bit larger bit here, just to get the pilot hole through this harder poplar. The pine is very soft, so I'm not worried about the size of the hole in the pine. The fibers will give quite a bit for that screw. But I just want to make sure I'm not going to have a hole too small, because I don't want to crack that leg. So I'm going to go up just a little bit bigger bit here and only just go through. There's probably about 1/4 of an inch that I want to cut through with it. That last bit was a 3/32 bit. I've moved up to a 9/64. It's pretty big. I want to make sure I just have clearance and there's no issue. I don't want to be pulling anything on this. I want the screw head to be seated firmly on the leg and draw that into the shelf. Okay. Go get a screwdriver and we'll put that in. I do have a power tool for this, but for the first one, I want to make sure it goes through nice and smooth and easy. And I don't want to be forcing anything. That Forstner bit is a 10mm bit. Just fits these screw heads perfectly. There we are. And just bring you over closer to have a look at that. So you can see the screw head is sunk down nicely in that pocket hole. Well, Forstner bit. So we'll put a little, cut a plug and fill that in with the plug. So I got the first 4 screws in on the one side of the leg, and you can see here why Having a shouldered screw is a lot better than having, for this purpose, is better than using a typical wood screw that's a flathead, kind of got a wedge shape. Any wedge shaped screw this close to the edge would just split that to bits. So that nice shouldered screw isn't going to put any pressure on the wood this way, is all the pressure is gone that way diagonally into this piece of pine. Now I don't have enough screws to do the rest of this piece right now, so I'm going to have to run off to my supply store and get some. And also going to pick up a dowel that'll go across the top for the clothes rack. So I'll be back and set up and maybe set up a time lapse for doing the remaining screws. Okay, here we go with the rest of the screws. So I'll put this on fast forward. Enjoy the music, and we'll see how it goes. So the camera stopped recording while I was doing some work on this. I apologize for that. But here we are. We got all the little plugs now put into the screw holes. And we have a crossbar put in place. This was a little bit tricky in that it was fairly easy to attach the crossbar on this end. I could simply put a screw through there, and of course now it's plugged. But on the other end, a little more challenging, what I did do is I put a screw through this way, and it runs up at a bit of an angle, which will do two things. One, obviously keeps it in place, but secondly, because it's on an angle, it'll prevent this from rolling. So I'm okay with that approach. I didn't bother burying that screw in a pocket hole in a dowel because it's out of the way, and it would weaken the structure to put to drill a hole in there that could be plugged with a dowel. So we're on to cutting off all of these and then major sanding. And finally, the last bit, the sanding will be associated with just making sure all these edges here are going to be even. And then we'll take the router and trim up all of the inside edges and these outside edges. So I'll set up the camera up so you can see me cutting off these dowels and then doing some sanding. That's the last of the plugs cut. So now we'll move on to sanding. Okay, we're ready to use our little trim router just to put a little bit of a quarter round on this edge here. So I'm using a 1/8 inch round over bit. It's a very subtle round over, but just enough to take off that edge. So let's see how this works. That has done a very nice job. A little bit of where the bearing came on the edge here, it's missing a little. So just a little wee bit of an edge left there, which I think I can get rid of with a little bit of sanding. But you can see the difference that the round over make. Again, small hands grasping this. I don't want any sharp edges. So I'll continue with the routing, go over all of the edges, and then come back and just do a little bit of touch sanding on that. That finishes up the routing. So we've got all the edges nice and trimmed, good. I'll just go over everything with a little bit of sandpaper or rough sand on it. So the last bit of sanding that we're doing on the little wardrobe here is just breaking this inside edge. I couldn't get the router into there to take that off with the router bit. So just going to use some 80 grit sandpaper held in my hand without a block, just to take that edge off. All right, we've gone over everything with rough sand with 80 grit. We'll now go over the entire piece with some 180 in preparation for some primer. All right, we've got our little toddler wardrobe clothes rack, Montessori style, all primed. Just going to give that a little bit of time to dry. Give it a light sand, and onto a finish coat. I'll flip it over and do the underside with the 180. Then I'm going to do each of these posts just light sand by hand. All right, the rest we do by hand. Good for paint. And here's the finished product. All painted, ready for some children's clothes and shoes. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.